Yeah, it's a really great question, Ibrahim, and thank you. And I think as we sort of move into this era of technology and what Mark Zuckerberg calls the sort of the future of personal computing is being able to connect people in these virtual worlds per se. And this is going to pose a lot of challenges as well as incredible opportunities for companies to get involved. And it's really going to push the level of innovation that a company needs to look at in terms of promoting their products or services within these virtual worlds. And it's a bit of a double-edged sword on how one would go about this. The interesting part is, and I think we spoke the last time we all got together, was on how new jobs are going to be created. Metaverse consultants, these types of things. There are jobs that we haven't even thought of yet that are going to sort of come out of this. The same as the onset of social media with Facebook, etc. Is we now have social media strategists, people that manage social media. Those kind of jobs 10 to 12 years ago didn't really exist. So there's a lot of interesting sides to what the metaverse can create. But to answer your question, how companies get involved, it's all about really the scope of what the metaverse is going to achieve in the next 5, 10, 20 years. Right now, I believe it's very brand focused. Brands are getting involved in all sorts, as Joe mentioned, even in the Biden-Harris campaign. Anything that is sort of a brand and can try and get access to the types of users that are in these virtual worlds at the moment will want to take advantage of that. But a very important point to mention is that these virtual worlds need to reach some sort of critical mass, and I think we're going to touch on this a couple of times during the session. Is to at the moment it's people that are quite niche in terms of how they're involved. Also the limitation of hardware in getting into some of these metaverses. But I think what Facebook and Meta Horizons is doing at the moment is definitely going to broaden it to a much bigger market. And to put that in a sort of a nutshell sort of sense, is that if you look at Facebook the way it is now, we've got groups, we've got personal profiles, those types of things. Call it your avatar, whatever that you log in with. Now picture this in a little bit more of an immersive and almost a 3D environment, where you can go and browse some of these shops, have your little clubhouse where you can go and meet other people as certain 3D visualization or 3D, 3D image of yourself, which we'd call an avatar. So, but like I said, it's going to take some time to reach that critical mass. But I think brands that want to get involved right now I'll touch on some of the key aspects, and I think Joe can touch a lot of those. And one of those big things is collaboration, being able to collaborate within the metaverse, whether this is from a business sense, educational sense, training, or just physically, or not physically connecting, being able to connect across the world in a space, in a 3D virtual environment. And I think we all know what has really accelerated this in the last 2 years, and that is obviously the pandemic has really put this at the front of people's minds on looking at how we connect on a day-to-day basis. I haven't got you on about the democratization of it, but I think that's the whole thing about the metaverse is it needs to be decentralized. And when we're basing it on things like NFTs and blockchain technology, I think that sort of becomes the crux of what it's all about. And certainly we don't want to have one big corporation in charge of it, like a Facebook, like Meta. It needs to incorporate and be accessible to everybody and not be controlled. But it's a difficult one to answer at this stage. Ibrahim, I think we need to see how it evolves.
There's an interesting point that you mentioned there, Brent, around hardware and the fact that we are talking here about Africa, and it's going to be a very long time before we see mass market of VR headsets here. We're talking about a continent that has only about 50% of people have regular internet access. So, I think that's a really key question when we talk about Africa. VR is not going to be the first experience for most people. AR, however, may well be. And I know Mick's very passionate about that. And I think there's some really interesting things that came out on the Niantic Lightship launch last night.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking to Joe's point, I think, Joe, like I said to you before, the way that you look at this in terms of most companies are looking sort of with a 10-year horizon. Most people, you're looking with like a 30 to 35-year horizon. So I think it's amazing. And to that point, I definitely agree with you. I think VR is not exactly the most accessible thing. It's difficult, especially because, look, where we are with VR right now, yes, companies like Meta, Oculus are making it sort of more accessible, but this isn't true VR. True VR is Omni treadmill, it's haptic feedback, it's, you know, all these kind of stuff, which, I mean, if, like Joe said, I mean, in sort of the rural parts of Africa, when sort of your basic necessities aren't exactly readily available, it's difficult to get something like an Omni treadmill for some reason. But hopefully, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the technology unfolds, and just how immersive it can truly be. And that's when we start to chat sort of neural interfaces, as opposed to, or sort of in place of the treadmills and the haptic suits, which is also very much dystopian future, Ready Player 2 kind of vibe. But I think this is too far of a conversation. It's too far in the future. So let's bring it back a bit and maybe bring it back to Ibrahim.
Yeah, I agree with Nick. It
Cool.
does
So
go deep, and it does bring up a lot of questions about this dystopian future.